Welcome back to the Dartmoor Diaries. This week we turn our attention to the Coach House, a building that, for some months, appeared to greet us with a cheerful smile. Yet beneath that grin lay a far less happy truth, and it required extensive repair to restore its strength and dignity. Alongside the work, we unveiled one of the estate's more unexpected luxuries, our outdoor hot tub, and took inspiration from a favourite local haunt, hinting at the future style of the Coach House. There was also a little saucing mischief, with enamel bowls repurposed into an impromptu spa experiment. Meanwhile, the main house brought fresh challenges, mildew creeping in as autumn takes hold, wallpaper stripped from the upstairs hallway, and this week's trending paint colours now under review for the soon-to-be-rebuilt boiler room. So join us for smiling facades, unexpected luxuries, and the occasional creeping menace. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Every subscription helps us restore this house to its full Victorian splendour. Allow us then to officially introduce you to our lovely Coach House, one of the principal reasons we fell so unreservedly in love with this property, and indeed, why we wish to make it our own. As you arrive at the rear of the house, you are greeted by this striking 1894 structure, standing with all the quiet confidence of a building that knows precisely how handsome it is. The Coach House boasts its own courtyard garden, a paddock with ample room for additional stables, and perhaps even a Dartmoor pony or two, and, rather incredibly, its very own outdoor hot tub, one that, we are assured, is filled naturally with Dartmoor's pure healing rainwater and underground peat-infused mineral springs. And, as if that were not already enough, it also offers vast, sweeping views across the moor. We have, alas, not yet managed to carve out the time to enjoy this particular luxury, but as the weather dips a few degrees, we fully intend to turn up the heat and indulge in a sunset soak or two. And, with any luck, by this time next year we shall be in a position to invite paying guests to come and enjoy this wonderful amenity for themselves. Inside, it's all rather basic. Downstairs, granite walls lie smothered in white paint, complete with a mechanic's pit for good measure. Upstairs, the rebuild and re-roofing of 2010 produced a simple wooden structure, poorly executed naturally, and destined one day to be rebuilt properly when we finally decide to put it to use. For some months now, we have been acutely aware that our beautiful Coach House has been smiling at us. Now, for most people, this would be a rather comforting notion, to be greeted upon one's return home by a vast and beaming grin. However, in our case, we soon discovered that this smile was less an expression of joy, and more the fixed grimace of a building attempting to put on a brave face whilst being quietly and desperately unhappy. The main beam in the Coach House was on the verge of failure. The joist had been bending alarmingly under the weight of the floor above, either because it was undersized for the span in the first place, or because years of water ingress had taken their toll, or most likely both. With acrow props installed quickly last week, Watson tightened them and coaxed the beam back into alignment, putting an end to its ill-timed smile. He then set about cutting the first beam to remove the rotten end of the joist, preparing to introduce a new one that would adequately overlap what remained. Armed with a slurp or two of builder's tea, Watson prized apart the old timbers, cutting through a handful of stubborn nails still clinging on for dear life, before finally liberating the decayed sections. With a little gentle persuasion and the not-so-gentle assistance of a flying saw, the joist finally came free, revealing just how rotten the original timber truly was. With a little more grinding, followed by some characteristically precise Watson-style measuring and cutting, the opposite section of rotten joist was duly freed. Here's a closer look at the timber itself, superbly rotten to the core and doubtful it would have held much longer. It seems to be something of a recurring theme in this property, that any work undertaken in 2010 is now decayed beyond use. It hardly speaks well of modern building techniques, albeit in this case poorly executed ones, when everything original from 1894 has endured for well over a century, while the more recent work has struggled to last a mere 15 years. In preparation for lifting the new joist into place, Watson first employed a piece of framing timber, a trial run if you will, to ensure there was sufficient space to swing the far heavier, more substantial replacement beam into position and to confirm the length was precisely as required. Watson then set about preparing the new joist. The ends were painted with bitumastic paint to guard against future moisture, before another round of precise measuring marked out the coach screw holes. At the ends first, then in a zigzag formation designed to minimise flex when the joists assisted together. He drilled and countersunk each hole with care, ready for the substantial coach screws to be driven through. Watson then applied a generous helping of construction adhesive and lifted the new joist into place. A quick test confirmed it would fit snugly, although a small slice still had to be removed thanks to an inconsiderate lump of granite protruding from the wall. With a little fine-tuning, the beam was cut to its final length and lifted back into position. Beforehand, the old joists had been given a thorough dousing of woodworm treatment, and the new joist as well for good measure, as there were a few visible signs that they had been hanging about. It's worth noting that the far right-hand end of the new joist was left unpainted, as it actually sits 35mm off the wall, meaning no moisture can penetrate from the granite. We'll probably still go back and give it a lick of bitumastic paint for good measure, though it isn't strictly necessary. Watson then added a few G-clamps along the joists while driving in the coach screws, pulling everything neatly together. With a few more clamps applied to ensure the old and new timbers adhered nicely, he was able to add the first of two shorter joists that would sister everything together. The second shorter joist was then offered up on the rear side and screwed neatly into place. The final result resembled something of a jam sandwich, with construction adhesive standing in for the peanut butter squished in the middle, or, in Victorian terms, perhaps more akin to the layers of a trifle. The final coach screws were put in place and, voila, a few mornings' work, but worth every moment Watson devoted to it. We now have a substantial, super strong beam once again supporting the floor above. No more signs of rot or any looming woodworm disasters, and the beam is now straighter than a surveyor's line drawn across the moor, or a length of fresh steel rails rolling out of the foundry. We can now sleep at night knowing the joist won't give way, and continue to work safely below as we get back on with the business of renovating the house. However, while we are here in the coach house, we thought we might share a little inspiration for the direction we might one day take with this space, drawn from one of our favourite local shops and cafes. If you are based in the UK, there's a fair chance you will already have come across Nkuku, who source and sell beautiful homewares from around the world. Fortunately for us, their headquarters are not far from where we live, and in recent years, they have added a superb cafe to their repertoire. It has become something of a regular haunt, whether for a coffee, one of their famous bacon and egg baps, or the chance to bask in their sun-drenched courtyard. And, on less sunny days, you will often find us happily ensconced in their corner seat, editing episodes of the Dartmoor Diaries with considerable contentment. They have done an absolutely beautiful job with the interiors, making use of what was already there and blending it with carefully chosen additions. Old timbers from the original building sit alongside rusted metal sheets, blackened steel doors and window frames, and industrial lighting, all softened by new pieces from their current collections. It rather reminds us of Australia and some of the striking barn conversions we saw during our time there, so we feel instantly at home in this style. The building has a warm, cosy yet contemporary feel to it, a look that is very much us, and not far from how we envisage the coach house in the future. Their old barns are brimming with treasures, artisan-made cushions, glass outdoor lanterns and picture frames that would sit perfectly in a Victorian house, let alone in a coach house conversion. Their sofas come in luxurious linens, their armchairs in handsome leather set against black steel frames, and this week, to my great delight, they have begun bringing in their Christmas decorations. I should confess, I am an unashamed Christmas person. Indeed, it is half the reason one buys a house like this, so it may be decorated in full splendour come December. Although, truth be told, I doubt we shall manage quite the display we imagine this year. The house is still in a state of cheerful chaos, and only a few rooms are even habitable. But there is no harm in planning or in dreaming of how to make what we have as splendid as possible when Christmas finally arrives. Despite having a great deal on this week, as we edge ever closer to our boiler installation date, with all manner of work unfolding behind the scenes, which we shall circle back to very soon, I somehow managed to escape for a little outing. The purpose, in theory, was to pick up a few much-needed items for the renovation. However, I appear to have developed a rather questionable habit, one I am determined to get under control at this very moment, as I confess it to you. The irresistible lure of auctions and sourcing from reclamation yards has well and truly taken hold. Those glorious opportunities, whether online or in person, to purchase sometimes utterly useless, yet somehow beautiful, pieces of furniture, gardenware, or indeed anything else one can possibly imagine, and to be fair, occasionally some incredibly beautiful and genuinely useful pieces, depending entirely on how controlled and focused one manages to be. So off I went. I say this with a laugh and a little snigger. Armed with a shopping list and a clear vision of what I was hunting for, I had hoped to find the bathroom vanity unit we so desperately need for the upstairs shower room. Instead, I emerged triumphantly with several oversized enamel bowls from Europe. Perfect, I assured myself, for soaking one's weary feet after a long day of construction. Which, in fairness to me, we have been working extremely hard, and a good foot soak in front of the fire did feel rather perfect. Watson, however, was less than convinced, so I set everything up and demonstrated just how perfect it could be. With a quick wash to remove years of dirt from the bowls, they were soon ready. First things first, one simply cannot enjoy a relaxing foot soak without at least a single candle lit. And then, not one but two newly acquired enamel bowls. And of course, a very good book to hand. Or two books for that matter. And of course, the most important part of the relaxation plan, one must have a call bell close at hand for those inevitable moments when the hot water requires topping up. The final ingredient, of course, is a measure of beautiful bath salts, or, in their absence, a generous splash of lavender bubble bath, then add water to complete. Finally, one must find a willing friend, particularly if Watson is still hard at work renovating and merely on looking, rather than partaking in this particular spa session. I can't begin to tell you how good that feels. With a pleasant amount of reading from my memoir book completed, a small top-up of hot water was required. Now, Watson had chosen not to indulge in my experimental hot water bathing session, preferring instead to press on with the renovation work. However, he did dutifully step into the role of Mrs. Hudson, leaping into action, right on cue, to pour more hot water into my foot spa, which was very much appreciated. So all in all, despite not returning with a suitable bathroom vanity on this trip, I think the alternative was rather successful indeed. What do you think? Meanwhile, while I indulged in my miniature spa, we were also contending with another adversary this week, mildew creeping its way into the upstairs of the main house. As you know, we are racing the clock to rebuild the boiler room and prepare it for the new system, so that we can finally bring heat into the house. With warmth at last, we might stand a chance of holding mildew and mould at bay this winter. The temperatures have dropped noticeably in the past fortnight. Autumn has declared itself in full force, and with it, certain ceilings have begun to blacken ominously. So, while balancing the time spent in the boiler room, I turned my attention back to stripping wallpaper from the upstairs hallway walls. Armed with our floor steamer, and without of course the appropriate Karcher wallpaper attachment, I decided that steam is steam, and the wallpaper had to go. The steamer worked a treat, and the paper began to peel away freely. In one sense, it feels like a wasted effort, since all of the gypsum plaster will eventually be removed in one go. But the wallpaper makes matters so much worse, providing a perfect surface for mildew to thrive, so for now the task is worth the trouble. Hopefully we can begin to bring this under control now. With a few dehumidifiers stationed along the landing, we should at least be able to prevent matters from worsening. But, in truth, the real key will be the heating, allowing us to run a little residual warmth through the upstairs rooms, even as the plaster comes down and we begin the long process of insulating and rebuilding the bedrooms. Despite the ongoing concerns with mildew, it has been a productive week working on the boiler room. There have been countless small jobs ticked off the list, though we thought it best to circle back to that room properly next week, when it is really coming together. But before we reach that point, one important decision must be made: paint colours. So here are this week's Dartmoor Diaries trending shades. Originally, this room was destined to be painted very dark, a look I still love, though in hindsight that might now be more fitting for the coach house, given the inspiration we shared with you earlier. For the boiler room, we want something more functional, yet still welcoming to step into. At present, a few shades of green are hanging about the walls, waiting to prove themselves, and today I've added 4 new contenders: a blue, another paler shade of green, more eucalyptus if you will, and 2 shades of dark grey. One of these is very aptly named Hopper, which feels rather fitting considering this space once served as the Hopper room. We'll deliberate over these in the coming week, and once the room itself is built, I'll share more of our plans. As always, we'd love to hear which colours you prefer and which ones you think are utterly outrageous. Until then, we look forward to seeing you in the comments below, and if you haven't already, do consider subscribing. Every subscription goes a long way in helping us rebuild and restore this beautiful house to its former glory. We'll see you soon. And we leave you with the incredible sight of a large owl that visited this week, perching in full view as a striking silhouette on one of the neighbouring trees, followed by a stunning pink sunset that unfurled itself across the sky above the house, bringing a rather grand close to Sunday.